Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Welcome to another Facebook Live. It is December the 2nd, 2020. It's the week right after Thanksgiving here in the United States. Hope everyone had a wonderful Thanksgiving. And here we are with our panel. We have Caesar, who is a channel and a medium, a spiritual teacher. We have Kelly, our Qigong teacher. Hi, Kelly. Travis, who is also a spiritual teacher, as well as a musician. And of course, our incredible Eileen, who's had a long day, but she's going to hang in there with us, right? Awesome. Thank you. So last week we were, I don't know, we talked about various topics. And April was actually going to do another comment of where I left off, but April is not here. So April and Louise are with us in the formless, right? They are always with us. They have not been able to make it today on the panel. April will not join, but Louise, I think, will join online. She always does. When she's not present on the panel, she's at least available online. So thank you for that, Louise. The last question that Summer had asked, I think we were talking about there had been a mass extinction around the dinosaurs or something of that sort. And Summer said, are they other human beings on this planet, or are they other beings in different planets, right? So that was her question. So let's get started. Caesar, do you want to talk about what is your experience on that? Thank you.
Well, I occasionally follow a gentleman, some may have or may not have heard of, by the name of Daryl Anka. And he's a channel, and he channels basically his future self of 3,000 years. And if you listen to this guy speak while channeling, he's a lot like Abraham Hicks in this sense, but he's much more detailed and very specific. And the message remains the same, almost to the T. So for starters, I would have to say that if you only think that this is the only life form on this planet, I beg to differ on that one. We know that there's billions of galaxies, and 100% I believe there's other beings out there for sure. I just feel that in my heart and know it to be true. Yes, I definitely 100% believe that there are beings out there. I believe that it's no coincidence that there have been sightings. I believe the government covers this up. I'm not going to get into politics over it, but there's a reason they do it. Not quite sure of the reason. Kelly might have a little more insight on that than I in that regards. But I believe, if you're going to, in that situation, I don't think that they would ever come and just expose themselves and be here. Hello, we're here. I think it would cause mass hysteria. And on a small politic standpoint, I believe the government thinks it would separate church and state. I feel that they call it the Council of Nine, if you do a little research. I've done some remote viewing in the past, and it wasn't on this planet. And the things I seen was absolutely mind-blowing. But it was very detailed, and it happened at 3 occurring times. Almost the same exact information was coming through in regards to the place and the beings themselves. And my experience is that I believe that there are 5 different types of terrestrials or hybrids. I believe that some walk among us, and I'll leave you with that because this is a long subject to get into. But the question was, do we feel and do we believe? Yes, 100%.
Thank you,
Yes.
Caesar.
Yes.
Travis, did you want to speak on that subject? Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Thanks, Caesar. It's interesting to hear. This is an interesting topic for me. I'm kind of fascinated by it. So, well, let's see. Well, I guess I'll begin with, I've always had a spiritual inclination that I can trace back even to early childhood. But I had some very pronounced awakening experiences around the age of 17. And it seemed as though to me at the time that there was something to do with other kinds of beings in some way. But because it is kind of a strange and controversial subject matter, and also too, just because of some of the different variables and elements at play in my life at that time, I'm very much willing to, I'm very open to the fact or the possibility that I may have interpreted something that way or conjured it up on my own. I entertain that possibility. For myself personally, it doesn't really matter whether or not it was something imagined and self-created, or whether or not it was something that was coming to me from the outside world. What's important to me is the impact that it made on me, and the way in which it kind of helped to set the trajectory of my life course. It's a funny thing. So let's see, where should I go with this? Is a lot of the things that I feel like were imprinted on me through those experiences were very basic, like health and nutrition and hydration, and understanding what my body needs and how to meet my bodily needs, so that I can serve in a more optimal way and experience and enjoy all that life has to offer all the more. So just as a youngster, getting that imprint of here's how you take care of this great vessel that you have. So that was a real, there was an impression left on me around health and just self-bodily care. I think I'll try to wrap it up with on this note, is that when I did have these experiences, it was as if some spirit, some quality of being, right, entity, came to me from way out there, and at the same time, all the same, it came from deep down inside of myself. And there was a knowingness and a realization that way out there and deep down in here is the same. And I think a lot of us, we have an unconscious assumption that the world is more real than us, that it existed before we were born, and that we will die and it will continue to exist after we're here. This isn't something that we can say is so with perfect certainty. It's just that everybody believes that to be the case. And so we all entertain that to be the case, because it would be weird to entertain otherwise. But I would like to offer a different way of looking at things to entertain, is that how do I put this, is that, I mean, in a word, I would say that perhaps all of this is born of your own imagination, not from the imagination of someone other than you. And I think that those kinds of reflections are worth entertaining, whether or not they happen to be true or not. I think that it's a healthy way to reflect and get comfortable with not knowing, and try to explore and find where are the parameters of who I am. How limited am I? Where do I begin? Where do I end? What kind of dynamism can happen through this space that is called me? And so that's what those were the takeaways for me around that. That imagination and experiential reality are not so different. That that our dreams deep down in our heart, and the universe and the world in which we live, which we share experience together, are not so different, perhaps. And I guess I'll say one more thing is that I think also one way that we think a lot of the time, without really checking it, it's just we just unconsciously assume. We think in terms of material, of dense material reality and existence, and it might be worth looking at things, entertaining it, that perhaps there are different frequencies, and so there are different levels of density. I know with one of the experiences I had as a youngster, it felt as though I was tuned in to more refined frequencies, more subtle frequencies. I was lit up or more awakened on those frequencies, and that was how it seemed as though there were beings present. But if I was in my normal state, I wouldn't have been aware of them. They didn't exist on the same gross, dense plane as my physical form. They were luminous beings that I kind of tuned into that radio frequency, and then I could see, I could hear. Just like when you tune into a radio, you get to that frequency, you tune in, now you hear that song. If you're not tuned in, you won't hear that song. You're tuned into a different frequency. So to think of things a little bit more like that, as opposed to just simply looking at things as though there's just this one dense, gross material frequency of existence. Sort of. That's what I have around all that. Sorry if that wasn't too long-winded, but thanks.
Thank you, Travis. I think Abraham Hicks uses that analogy of tuning. She calls it calibration. To get calibrated to your inner being or conscious connection to source is tuning in. It's just like radio frequency. And why is somebody not in the receiving state is because the actual frequency may be 107.5 and they're listening to 101.1, something like that, right? I think Louise asked, hi Louise, thank you so much for being here with us. So Kelly, along with that question, if you can answer Louise's question too, because it's related to this whole, are they parallel universes or other beings? She says, I have a question. My mom, who is diagnosed with Alzheimer's, keeps telling me that she sees my daughter staring at her. So they just stare at each other. Then my daughter disappears, wondering if this means anything. Beautiful.
Sure. Yeah.
Go ahead. Thank you.
Wonderfully said, Caesar and Travis. Short answer is yes. There are oral histories on this planet that have been systematically sort of whittled down. There are oral histories on this planet that go back 35,000 years in the Zulu nation, among the medicine men in the Zulu nation, that chronicle and categorically describe 26 other races that have gained sentience on this planet, 7 of which are still around in the 3D world. I have had conversations with Anishinaabe First Nation elders that talk about the star people as if we're talking about their aunts and uncles, and 3D face-to-face encounters with them as well. So just the simple fact that the universe is so vast, it is completely beyond any sort of logic to make the assumption or the declaration that we are the only living sentient creatures in existence. some of my own experiences channeling or when I was younger and more grounded in being in nature all the time and being open to certain frequencies and vibrations show me that other levels of reality, other frequency and vibrations of reality include whole civilizations and whole groups of beings that live in a completely different reality that we cannot see, cannot feel, unless, as Travis said, you are actually attuned and connected to that frequency and vibration. And it's very simple physics. It's like Star Trek when people are out of phase, you know? It's like, it's one of the things I love about Star Trek. It's just like, that stuff right there, but like, you know, a little different. When we start talking about frequency and vibration, you know, this is what the universe is made out of. Every molecular structure is connected. Every molecule atom is connected by energy, vibrating at a specific frequency and vibration. And this is the whole point of being present, is to learn how to feel that space deep inside of us so that we can feel those spaces around us and feel how we're connected to them ourselves naturally. This is where concepts of the supernatural just disappear, because the natural capacity of the human experience, of the human person being, to experience depth in reality, depth of feeling, we've only started to scratch the surface. There is so much more out there that you know, mainstream thought does not want to have included or wants to keep restricted information-wise, because, as Caesar said, a lot of minds figure it would cause a mass panic. Except we have had our consciousness seated for decades and decades and decades, thanks to Hollywood and sci-fi shows like Star Trek and The Outer Limits, and, you know, other shows that explore the fluidity of reality, are really seeding information into our awareness, into the global consciousness, about the fact that reality is much deeper, vaster, grander than what our limited five senses and 3D reality cause us to believe and choose to believe in. Travis, I loved your whole thing about vibration and frequency, because that is exactly how I look at everything. You know, with my Qigong practice and having done it for such a long time, you know, there is nothing that I do not look at with it, you know, without looking at it as vibration and frequency. You know, everything. Every feeling I feel inside of me is also has a density. So Travis, what you were saying about like everything being inside of us, also being a connection and a reflection outside of us, is something that I fully, completely agree with and believe in as well. And this is how, you know, we also get confused on this subject, because a lot of the time we're so focused on, you know, visceral scientific evidence, except then we have these experiences and it's just like, okay, I didn't move from my chair, I didn't like do anything, except like 3 hours just disappeared and I had this whole other experience of this whole other life on this other planet or in this other timeline. You know, this is, you know, concepts of accessing information inside of us through vibration and frequency are only just beginning to be understood as possible in the scientific or modern scientific community, because there are shamanistic traditions and indigenous paths that go back tens of thousands of years that have known about this stuff, like the Dogon in Africa, who understand high calculus and understand the fact that Sirius B, the planet Sirius, or the moon of Sirius, exists, and they actually have star maps that they can explain in mathematical equations. And this is a primitive tribe in Africa that has this understanding, right? So this completely clashes with sort of like the mainstream concept of linear time and history. So yeah, my short answer was yes. And to Louise, her experience with her mother, one of what I can immediately read energetically off of that is that her daughter is astrally traveling, and it would make total sense that Louise's mother, who is in an altered energetic mental state, is actually registering the presence of Louise's daughter or her granddaughter in this case. That makes total sense. I have had that happen. Not that I have, in altered states of awareness, just training physically, doing my Bagua, my Qigong, I have had perceptual slips where I register someone and I honestly think I've had a conversation with them about something that we're going to do that day. And then I phone them up and I go, hey, where are you? And they're like, what? What do you mean? What's going on? And it's like, and then, and then I can read from them, like I haven't talked to them. And I realize that the energy that I'm getting from them is not the same energy that I felt we had that conversation with. So the vibration, the frequency don't jive. So I realize that I've actually had this sort of ultra dimensional communication, Vulcan mind meld, or call it whatever you want, and just sort of go, oh, wait, sorry, I had that conversation with myself, and I guess we're having that conversation now. But just as a personal point of reference. So what Louise is saying makes absolutely total sense to me, because I have known, I knew my grandparents, spent a lot of time around them. And when they started getting older and having some of these slips, the energy around them, like I could literally feel the person that they thought they'd had a conversation with, or they thought they talked to my mom or my uncle or my aunt, and registering that feeling, that vibration of the information that they're sharing with me about this conversation gave me the point of reference for understanding when it would happen to me after intensely physical experiences, such as training for a couple hours or meditating for a couple hours. So what Louise's mom is experiencing makes absolute total sense. The fact that Louise's daughter is also in a very discombobulated state and probably pushed out of her body and very astral because of her current life situation, the trauma to her body is pushing her energetically outward. It would make sense that she would want to seek a connection with her family energetically. So on a certain level, her astral self is seeking that connection and and can feel grandma really easily, because grandma is also very astral because of the mental state that she's in. So that makes total sense, what Louise is asking and what Louise's mom is experiencing. And again, it's something that actually happens very commonly with people who have quote unquote dementia, who are older, quote unquote, and who are shifting themselves out of their body slowly. They're getting ready for that transition because their energetic system is stepping into that space, so they are open to that kind of astral connection.
But is she trying to communicate and say, like, get through her grandmother and get to?
Oh, yeah. Was there any more from Louise?
Let me see.
I would absolutely say yes. I mean, on some level, Louise's daughter wants to connect. In her heart, she absolutely wants to heal and wants to have that connection and wants to have that healthy relationship. And sometimes people, it's in their heart, but they're so far gone in their patterns and their trauma that they are putting themselves through that they're not conscious of how much they actually want that in their heart.
So the daughter is actually trying to connect back to the family. That's what it means. Thank you, Kelly. Yes.
Yeah.
The daughter is at the non-physical level connected with her inner being. Her inner being is wanting to connect back with the grandmother.
Yep.
or connect with the family. And I'm sure if Louise were to go into presence and stay there for a few hours, she would feel the connection too. The grandmother, it's easier because she has Alzheimer's, so she's like partially in the other realm and partially in this 3D realm, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yes.
Yep.
Thank you. Thank you for that. In the book Nature of Personal Reality, as Seth says, right, that every human is living in 7 moment points. So there are other personalities. So of course, there are other beings right at this moment. We think of things in the time, in kind of like sequential linear time, chronological time, but in the timeless realm, we are ourselves in 7 different forms. Like we may be in the 14th century, we may be like Caesar says, right? Somebody is 2,000, 3,000 years in the future. So there's a future self. We don't know how many future selves we have. And the present moment is actually the depth of that present moment is actually when we connect with all 7 moment points or all 7 whatever reincarnational selves that we know of. The other part to it is, if you all look at when we make decisions, right? So we say, am I going to drink this thing of water or not drink this thing of water? The instance we make the decision, I'm drinking this water, the other probability is also created. The other probability where I'm not drinking the water is also created. The same way as if I think I'm a brown person right now, a female brown person, also the other probability is created, where I may be white, I may be black, I may be something else, but other probabilities are also created at the same time. We just don't know about it because of we are very much like Travis says, right? Everybody stated it. Caesar said it, Kelly said it. The frequency, the depth of frequency or the calibration is not there for us to experience all the different probabilities of who we are. So when we say we are being robbed, there's also the opportunity where we are not being robbed. If you say we are not wealthy, we are lacking financial success, there's also the other probability where we have humongous wealth, right? So we need to get connected to the one that has humongous wealth, right? The other probability of who we are. So let's look at the next question. I think we answered that question. Thank you. Tina asks, what are tarot cards and do they have any place in a person's spiritual practice? Quick answer. Somebody wants to give a quick answer? You want to? Go ahead, Kelly. Thank you.
Tarot cards are a European method of divination. They are rather old method. It's like throwing bones or runes. All 3 things which I did at one point when I was medium and channeling for friends in university. Tarot cards are interesting. The biggest thing that I learned from tarot cards is how to listen and how to feel the information. Yeah, I mean, it got to the point where, you know, friends would sit down and say, okay, I want a reading. And I knew literally like someone had dropped the tabs down on my browser, like what was going on and stuff like that. And it was after a certain amount of practice, I found with tarot cards, which are a reflection of what's in a person's energy field. When a person pulls the cards, whether or not you cut them and lay them out, or whether or not the other person cuts them or lays them out, they are a reflection of the energy and the space that you guys are sharing and the information that the person that you are doing the reading for, or even if it's for yourself, what you are trying to understand. And There are all sorts of different types of tarot cards. I actually use one called Oracle cards right now that encompass a sort of a symbolic nature of reality. They're very beautiful, and they do not they give you life lessons. They give you, you pull it, and this is like basically the focus of the life lesson in the moment that you are working through. There are all sorts of types of spreads and ways that you can use tarot cards specifically. Oracle cards are a little different, as I said. The Rider-Waite deck is the most common, most widely used European version of this. In China, you have the I Ching, the Book of Changes and Divination, where you throw 3 coins. It's just like throwing 3 bones or rune stones kind of thing. Tarot cards can help a person learn how to listen, because when you get used to the information in the tarot cards and you look at the symbolism in all of the cards, because all of the cards, like especially the Rider-Waite, they're very, very good for the Eurocentric brain, because they encompass Eurocentric symbology that we can then connect with and reflect on, and the symbolic nature of the information that we are connecting with. Let's see how many more times I can say connect.
Is there a reason why a spiritual person would engage into it? That's what her second part of the question was.
Second part, to learn how to listen.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you, Kelly. I'll go back to Eileen. Eileen, did you want to talk about the, are there other forms or other planets? What are your thoughts on it?
I don't think I have any specific thoughts to add, but I know that there's a few people that I have, that I follow their teachings, and Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden are 2 of them. And I find that a lot of the things that they, it's like giving those up. A lot of the things that I hear from them, year or 2 ago, I probably would have been very confused. But now, after the journey that I've been on after the last, 14 months or whatever, I listen to them and I'm like, that makes sense. Or just talking about like the evolution of the species and quantum physics and things. And I think that everyone here did a wonderful job of explaining more information for me.
That everything is a math, you're a math teacher?
Yes.
Everything is a mathematical equation.
Yes, everything.
Even like the rose petal is like a mathematically, they open up the spirals,
Yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Everything is math, and I love quantum physics personally because I'm very scientific minded and I understand physics and all of that. And so learning from Dr. Bruce Lipton, being able to learn that form of physics has really helped me understand the bigger picture, because I'm like, oh, that makes sense. But just the whole idea of energy and how it's all connected, and our, what do I call it, like that whole mind and body connection. So like being able to even heal ourselves with our beliefs, or the opposite for many people, including myself. And so I've found their teachings very powerful.
Thank you, Eileen. So Dr. Bruce Lipton, if anybody.
Dr. Bruce Lipton and Greg Braden.
Okay. I've seen Lakshmi share Greg Braden's, I think she watches him live or something. Sometimes I see it on her posts. So.
I haven't watched him recently. Well, no, once last week, but yeah, he's very interesting to watch. I love some of the research that he does, and he's what do they call that? I'm trying to think of what type of science it is. So he studies like remains and fossils, and so like he's found evidence of things that have obviously happened thousands of years ago, but you would think that it's from present day.
Anthropology?
Yes, I guess that's what it's called. And so it's very interesting, very interesting.
Thank you, Eileen. The next question comes from Sandhya. Thanks for having me here and now. Now that I'm practicing ET's teachings of disidentifying with my thoughts, I find myself thinking less and worrying less. However, where does this famous saying fit? We become what we think. In absence of time and lesser thinking, what I am going to become. We become what we think. Caesar, the person that follows Abraham Hicks and talks about thoughts become things.
Yeah, I mean,
Not a better person. Go ahead.
yeah, as well, we're staying on the course of energy here, and your thoughts, as we all know, are a form of energy. In the same way that putting words on paper is also a form of energy. Speaking is a form of energy. Everything is creating its vibrational frequency, even the thought. And you touched on it very nicely about putting it out there. And so when you speak on or think of what you fear of becoming or what you desire of becoming, you are actually starting to manifest the reality of that, depending on the feeling that is created. And while you are in the process of thinking about what you want to become, what you might become, or what you fear to become, because once the alignment takes place where you have the thought and the emotion becoming one, the possibilities of the manifestation becoming a reality is very great. Again, it is when the thought and the emotion marry. So you have the feeling of whatever it is that you desire that is in connection with the thought. That is the power behind manifestation. Many people get it wrong and they focus on the void of what they want. And it's a very delicate line there, to be careful on what end of the stick you're focusing on at that point. Because if you're, focusing on the void of what you want, you're saying you need this because you don't have this. Well, where is your attention really? I mean, if it's just on the south side of what you want, you can expect the void to continue to be there for you. So as far as becoming what you want to become, Mom always told us when we were young, you can become anything you want to become. And I wholeheartedly believed her. And to the day, I believe that anybody can become anything. The limitations of, what we can achieve or become is our thinking, as far as doubts about being able to do something or, to achieve something that that you desire. And it's just all about, focusing on the good stuff. Stay positive. Stay positive in that what you want and create the feeling as though you are already it of that you desire to become or wish for. That is very important as far as manifestation goes. I'm probably stepping away from the question here. What was the question? How
do thoughts, what do I become if I'm thinking less and less?
Oh yeah, if you're thinking less and less, that's very powerful too. That's step 3, getting out of the way. That's very important too. Once you have the desire and know what you want, it is important to generalize. And the less thinking you do, I mean, the only thing that stops things from showing up in your life are resistant thoughts. So by having no thoughts, you increase your chances, I think, drastically. And I'll just end it on that. No thoughts gives you the best possibility of not blocking the chances of what you want to show up. Because again, the only thing that stops things from showing up are resistant thoughts about it, whatever it is you desire.
Thank you, Caesar.
Thank you.
And what I would say is, even if you think less and less thoughts, doesn't mean we don't need normal stuff. Like, we still need food. We don't realize, even to get a cup of coffee, that's a manifestation. Very easily, we could be in lockdown where we couldn't go outside to buy the coffee and end up with no coffee, right? We could be in various constraints. We could be in Syria being bombed, right? Or like Eckhart talks about the terrorist attack in the hotel in Mumbai, where his friend was stuck in a room for 5 or 6 days while the terrorists were shooting the whole hotel up, right? Then where is the coffee and where is the sleep and where is peace at that moment in time? So the fact that we are manifesting day to day, like food, shelter, clothing, that is a manifestation as well. Very small example. So I've been looking, since we are into buying masks, I've been looking at trying to buy more masks, right? Because we use it daily. And I would look and I would get confused and I would shut down. I would look, I would get confused, I would shut down the browser. I would look, I would get confused, I would shut down how many designs and how many 3-ply, this thing. You won't believe it, Wendy, the neighbor that joined a group meditation, right? The other day, last 2 weeks back or something, she came by and she dropped 2 boxes of masks and more cloth masks, like 2 boxes of the disposable and more cloth masks. I didn't ask her. She said that's what she does. She goes and gives everyone masks. That's her, being in hospice care, that's her way of giving to other people. And she said, I want you to be safe. The numbers are going up. Here it is for you and your son. There are a bunch of masks. And I was like, thoughts become things, right? You focus on it enough number of times, and my browser and looking, and Facebook would feed, once you hit on that, Facebook feeds it to you over and over again, the space mask and the Stark vacuum mask. And I don't know, there's another company that constantly appears on Facebook. So thank you. Thank you for that, Caesar. Travis.
Yeah. Hey, go ahead.
Go ahead, Caesar.
So I was gonna say, you was thinking about it. You was active in the thought about it, and as soon as you stopped thinking about it, it showed up. And I was just gonna say that was no coincidence, because nothing in life ever happens without intention. And you had the intention. It wasn't until you got out of the way and stopped thinking about it that it did show up. So it's just correlating with the question.
Thank you. The art of allowing, the surrender, chapter 10, the meaning of surrender. The moment we surrender and say, okay, I'm done with this, I'm not going to look at it anymore, it shows up in our life. So thank you. Very small example. Travis, you want to speak to her? What will she now become if the thoughts have lessened?
Okay, yes. I like this question because I think that it draws our attention to something that it requires the most refined quality of discernment to really get to the essence of what it is that I think Sandhya is pointing to. Because in the beginning of her question, she says, thanks for having me here and now. Now that I'm practicing ET's teaching of disidentifying with my thoughts, what the thoughts are forms, thoughts become. And so now I'm just going to allow myself to, that part is that's the absolute. That's the unchanging, the unchangeable, immutable reality. The latter part of the question, she's saying, how do I reconcile becoming what I think? All of this fleeting things, these things are fleeting and ephemeral in nature. They come into being, they exist for a time, and then they eventually disintegrate and cease to be, and it's as if they weren't at all at a certain point. And so you go, how do I reconcile these two things? Being now, evermore, never less, along with who I am coming into being, and some responsibility around where my thoughts go. So this is what I'm learning, and what I'm playing around with putting into practice lately, and I think is tremendously powerful, and I think is also very much in alignment with Eckhart Tolle's teaching, is to take our attention, right, which is where thought emerges out of the light of our attention. But our attention precedes thought, and our attention is independent of thought. Thought is dependent upon the light of our consciousness. People say we become what we think. I don't know if it was the wisest person that ever lived that created that saying, or if it's the wisest people that have ever come to be who keep it alive. There's still some truth to it, though, I believe. And so, but what's most important is, by my reckoning, is that we're able to differentiate with precision, clarity, and accuracy exactly that which is real in the spiritual sense, meaning it's never any less real. It's that which is just as relevant right now in this moment as was 1,000 or 2,000 or 5,000 years ago, no less relevant then than right now, and again would be however far into the future. It's never not absolutely worthy of our attention, and that is the fundamental reality of life, the immutable, unchanging, undifferentiated reality. It's never not that way. It's never not present. It's never not here. It's never not there. So to go, okay, that's reality. It's never not reality. And then subsequently, we happen to exist as a person, as a human, in time. And we all have that experience of existing as a mortal entity here. And so what we give our attention to, there's great power in our imagination. I think this even connects kind of with the last question. And so there's tremendous creative power in our mind's eye, in our imagination. But this is the fun part for me, what I'm having just a blast playing around with lately, is I take my attention and I keep bringing it back to not that which is fleeting. I just keep taking my heart to the place out of which all that is ephemeral emerges. I keep going back to the heart of life, back to the center of life. You call it God, you can call it the moment, you can call it whatever it is that is that couldn't be more worthy of our attention. Whatever it is that there's nothing more special than. I want to bring my attention there right now. And that is, I think, the most explosive, the most powerful creative force. I think it can fill us with a sense of awe and wonder and mystery. And I know, I'll tell you one thing that I like. I can't read it, but one thing that I like, that I've noticed about myself in playing with manifestation, playing with visualization, playing with intention, playing with playing and being creative as a mystical being here alive in this world, is I love surprises. so much. I love to be surprised. I love to not know and go, oh my goodness. I love nothing more than that in the relative, dimension of life. So for me, I just like to conjure up or come into the most wondrous feeling space that I can within myself and be there, and then let the rest take care of itself. That said, I won't lie. I do have some things that if I could have my druthers, or there are certain requests I suppose I would put in. I'd be lying if I said there weren't some specific things that I would love to come to see in my life. But if they don't, I think I'll fare just fine. So I hope that answers the question. But just that there's more power in our attention really than our thinking. Our thinking is a subsequent part of attention, and that primarily we should offer our attention to that which is primary, not secondary, which would be the absolute relative to the relative. And then from there, we can play around with the relative, but not seek ourselves in it, because that which becomes, it says we become that what we think. That which becomes is who you aren't. I hope that's not too cryptic or too mystical sounding, but that which comes into being is exactly who you aren't. I'll stop there.
We cannot hear we cannot see what Caesar is putting up on the 10. Oh, 10. You got full marks.
Yeah, I loved his answer. That was beautiful.
If people like it, I'm glad. Yeah.
Thank you, Travis. So from your response, the experience that I go back to is tying back into what Caesar was saying. The non-physical in us is something that expands to infinity. If this physical form was not here, it actually, the evolution, what Eckhart says is the evolutionary impulse of the universe, right? That push is expansion. And if he were to say, okay, I'm not going to think thoughts and kind of like pressure cooker ourselves and say, oh, there's now nothing left in life, right? I don't need to become anything. Then we are going against the nature of this expansion. Like what you said, right? In the unmanifested, going deeper in. So one is the outward expansion into the external world, more things, but there's an inner journey that you were talking about, that we can make that inward journey all the more into stillness, the plenum void, the infinity. There's infinite depth to it, right? And that's all that is needed. I can sit here, not think thoughts, and just be. And that is enough, right? Moment by chronological moment after chronological moment, just being is good. Beyond that, if you become the greatest musician on the face of the earth, or you become a great spiritual teacher, that's just bonus. But this moment, I just want to be. That's all that is needed, right? That's what I heard you say. Thank you. You're on mute.
Oh, you summarized it perfectly. Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Travis. Kelly, do you want to say something to Sandhya?
Yeah, this is a really interesting question. There's a lot of detail we could get into here. However, one of the things that is generally missing from a lot of literature is the steps of refinement and progression of awareness through developing stillness. Stillness is something that is very specific to the training of the standing state Qigong that I teach, where you learn how to step back into your body and observe the mind and observe the impact the mind has on the body. And in so doing, identify the programs of the monkey mind, the habits, the patterns, and hold space against them consciously so that you turn them inside out and align them with your heart and turn all of that energy back inward and align with stillness and create more and more stillness inside of us. Now, for someone who is wondering about, we become what we think, this is sort of a, I'm not exactly sure the word, I want to say transliteration, but it's not, it's a combination of a couple sayings, I think, therefore I am, which, yeah, right. Yeah, Caesar, I know. The far more correct expression would be, I feel, therefore I am. Because everything is about frequency and vibration. And when we work at becoming more and more still inside of us, what happens is that the way we actually use our awareness changes dramatically. Lesser thinking, as in denser thoughts, worries, anxieties, fears, judgments, do become a lot less, to the point where they will actually become non-existent. And this frees up a lot of space to feel a lot more, and to feel more stillness, and to feel more concretely the alignment within ourselves when we are in alignment versus when we are not. And this is the important step in progression, is understanding that the mind does not stop having thoughts. The connection to that information changes. We stop being attached to the thoughts. So thoughts that are heavy and dense and do not match our vibration and frequency stop happening. This is why stillness is so important. This is why being physically present is so important, because we develop this capacity to step back into observation and let attachments to thoughts completely disappear. And this is where we get into that space of what Travis was talking about, of feeling that eternalness inside of us and being able to connect to that eternal presence from which we all spring, that cosmic ocean that we can all connect to if we put in the time and the work. And it takes time and it takes work to become practice. And it's just like learning how to play the guitar or the piano or an instrument, or learn how to ride the bike. It takes practice. The idea and the concept is very, very simple and straightforward. And that's just learning to listen and connect and to feel and to be present. However, it's a practice and it's a constant evolution. And the in absence of time and lesser thinking, what am I going to become? Well, you're going to become more of who you really are. Travis, I love the way you said you're going to become what you are not. Was that?
Oh,
did,
no.
I get that
No,
correct?
I said that what becomes is who you aren't.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. What becomes, yes. So when we are overthinking and when we are lost in lesser thinking, we end up manifesting what we are not. Our fears, our anxiety, our judgment. We end up manifesting the limited reality of human expression. When we go inside and we practice being present and we practice listening and the feeling, we open up ourselves to understanding how much more vast our experience really can be and is, even in a general sense, when we are no longer attached to the lesser thinking or the fear, the judgment, the anxiety, and the limited belief structures that keep us imprisoned in our limited three-dimensional linear five senses. And I say linear three-dimensional five senses because we are multidimensional beings. Scientifically, you can prove that everyone has an electromagnetic field that operates and modulates through various particle frequencies, electromagnetic frequencies, various modalities, various tunings. It's like turning the volume or like my mom and dad got an old stereo system at home with mono, phono, and the old vinyl player and stuff like that. And it's just like tuning the vinyl, like the record on the vinyl player. And that, like, to me, that is like one of the pivotal learning experience of like how to listen and feel to whether or not you got the speed right, or you got the stereo balanced, or you got all these other, little dials and knobs like in the right position to actually connect and feel that space where the record's going to play perfectly. And to me, that's always been an amazing analogy. And like, again, connecting to that place inside, that eternalness of our inner being, where the wisdom of our heart is, where our alignment with spirit is. And, that is also the joy of the journey, is not knowing what you are going to become, because everyone is unique inside and there's no cookie cutter answer for this. So, wondering what you are going to become, that is, why do you need to know? Got to ask yourself, what part of you is trying to, control the experience by asking, oh, what am I going to become? It's like, should I be worried about this? It's like, what's going to happen? Oh my goodness. It's like, that's another level of needing to step back and just let it all happen. Because that is where we connect with the gentleness with ourselves to allow our true nature, our true alignment with spirit to just blossom. My 2 cents.
Thank you, Kelly. I think you touched upon what that sentence actually means. You become what you think is the limiting beliefs. When somebody has limiting beliefs, they become what they think. If they have the limiting belief that I'm going to sabotage myself, I'm going to sabotage myself in the back of their mind, in the subconscious or unconscious, then they are going to manifest a sabotage, right? A good relationship, and suddenly they yell at their partner, and now they've broken up, and they're going from one partner to another partner to another partner. So that holds true for that type of situation, right? You become what you think. Thank you. Thank you for bringing up limiting beliefs. Eileen, did you want to say something about Sandhya's question?
The thing that I wanted to mention was, and I think either someone brought it up in the comments on Facebook, or maybe one of you mentioned it, was gratitude. Because, and I don't know if it's relating to necessarily this question or a mix of this one and the last one, but I feel like when you have that thinking mind like out of the way, then what you're left with is, the being, but being grateful for that. I feel like that's, for me, that's where like the most growth has happened, because I feel like that's when the changes can occur. And the last question mentioned something about something that made me think about like healing. And I don't know who on the panel mentioned, but like being able to, use your thoughts and your beliefs. And I feel like for me, once I started being grateful for things that maybe weren't necessarily happening at that time, but that I showed gratitude for them anyway, then that's kind of when things, for me at least, started happening, even if they hadn't been before. So I think I might have wanted to say that at the beginning of this part, but that's okay.
Thank you, Eileen. Do we have any other questions? Trish?
There's just some comments on some other things that have been mentioned, but no actual additional questions.
There was something Trish said, right? I'm going through a transition.
Oh, yes. Yes, sorry.
So
I
Trish
thought you meant
says-
more, like more, but no, yes, that's on there.
Thank you. Eileen does a fantastic job. I'm so
Yeah.
grateful. I'm going through a transition, getting divorced, practicing Ayurveda, getting over addiction. Any advice? Are my relatives looking out for me? I'm going through a transition, getting divorced, practicing Ayurveda. Caesar, you want to get started? Are my relatives looking out for me?
I believe so. It's a great time to practice acceptance. The addiction is the Band-Aid for the bullet wound. As Eckhart says, every addiction starts with pain and ends with pain. And if the divorce is what is causing the pain through quote unquote losing somebody, whether it was your call or not, perhaps that is not being accepted by you. And perhaps that is where the addiction arises, is to mask that reality. And I think to curb that would be to get to the heart of the matter, and it would be the resistance that you're not acceptant of the divorce, let's say, if that is the case. Because I can see a divorce and an addiction going hand in hand. Maybe that was the reason for the divorce, unless I just got this all wrong. But I think it starts with acceptance, and it is a good time to embrace the isness of that situation. Divorce is not always a bad thing. In fact, it depends on how you look at it. It would be a good time to, fall in love with yourself. And, the addiction can drop to the wayside through acceptance and ridding yourself of the pain naturally instead of, chemically. And, acceptance. Beautiful time to start. I was at a similar stage in my life a while back, and coming across the Eckhart Tolle book and learning about power of presence is what literally pulled me through every trial that I ever faced beyond that point and leading up to that point. As the emotions came up, it was an opportunity to bring them into light. It would activate the pain body, and I would fully accept it and embrace the isness of it, and and it would dissolve, and I never had to deal with it again. I could talk about the deaths of family members or a divorce without getting saddened, because once it was brought to the light of the consciousness, it literally dissolves and it becomes okay. So yeah, I would say the addiction is part of the pain, perhaps, of the divorce, and it starts with non-acceptance. So I would say good time to practice that. Yes.
Thank you, Caesar.
Thank you.
I think Eckhart, especially with the pandemic, if you'll watch any of the free videos or watch the Be the Light, he talks about chaos and order, right? There are two polarities. Like if you think there's order in our universe, then there's always chaos that follows it. The pandemic for the whole planet is something of that nature. Divorce is something like that, right? It's chaos. We had an orderly married life, and now chaos is being created to evolve you. And what Caesar said, fall in love with yourself. So back to Travis's Stillness, I call it my beloved. I heard the Sufi saint what is his name? Llewellyn Wan Lee. He was interviewed by Oprah, and he said that Sufis call their connection to God their beloved, right? So I always, when I go into my inner stillness, I say, I'm making this connection with my beloved, right? I did meditation right before the session. I was like, it's time to be with my beloved, which is my own inner being. I don't need any relatives, or there's no other connection that is needed more than the connection with my beloved. And that's it, right? Fall in love with yourself is the first thing. Everything else will take care of itself the moment the alignment is there with the inner being. So thank you. Thank you for that, Caesar. Eileen, did you want to talk about Trisha's problem?
I just want to say I love what you just said. I'd never heard it said that way.
Thank you.
When I got to go back up because I was just reading the comment section. Going back. Oh, okay, yes. She was asking about advice. I think what Caesar was saying about, like, it starts with like just that acceptance. And when he was saying that, I kept thinking about what we have mentioned quite a few times over the last few weeks, is just being accepting of what is, because it is. So, I mean, she's being divorced. She's in the middle of a divorce, then she's getting divorced. And so resistance is what causes our suffering. And so definitely the first step would be, working on that acceptance. After that, the suffering will dissolve. I have not been there in that particular fashion through addiction and divorce, but I have been there for many other reasons. And that's the only way, is through acceptance. Otherwise, the suffering will never cease, ever.
And you have to throw in the G word.
Be grateful for every single bit of it, even the suffering, because the suffering is what leads us to that spiritual growth. At least that's how I see it. So I'm grateful for all that is. Doesn't matter if it was the suffering or the growth or the process. It doesn't matter. Be grateful for every bit of it.
Thank you. And in that surrender and gratitude, what is available is effortless grace. When people talk about grace, where miracles arise, that singular vertical, being in the vertical dimension where we are surrendered and in gratitude, we are invincible. Invincible. We don't need any relatives. Nothing is needed, right? So thank you. Thank you for that lesson. Travis, did you want to say something? Thank you. You always have
Sure.
a different perspective.
Well, I'm really appreciating the perspectives that have been shared so far. It's moving to hear what everyone has to say, and I'll piggyback a little bit on what Eileen was just saying, because I think I'm borrowing this from Eckhart Tolle, but to add the word radical to acceptance, just radical acceptance, because I think sometimes when it's in situations like divorce and these things that are going to be up there with the more challenging experiences we can have in our lifetime, that has been helpful for me to go, oh, this radical acceptance of and because it's like you're saying, Eileen, just being grateful for all of it and being able to, and I know for myself in my similar situations, it has taken me a bit of time to eventually really get into that space. So sometimes I think if it's more challenging, we're all different. Some people can find it quicker, I'm sure, but sometimes it takes time to really get into that space where you wouldn't change it if you could go back and do it any differently. You go, no, this this has served me so deeply and so tremendously. So that's huge when we're able to come into that space. And I guess what I can try to add to what's been said is that I think that in relationships, it's like if we've been working on ourselves and trying to be more honest with ourselves, trying to be more refined within ourselves and who we are, and our quality of consciousness, our quality of being, our state of being, and then you bring it to a relationship, and now you get to see all the areas that you have not been honest with yourself, where you blame others and you create stories and you create misery and suffering for people you love the most. I'm just referencing my own experience with myself. So, and that's tremendously challenging. And so it kind of puts it to the test, because I always look at it, relationship, like it's holding a mirror up very closely. And sometimes you see things that without someone else there, you would find strategic ways to avoid looking at that yourself, because it's not your most flattering feature. And so we find ways to avoid seeing certain aspects of ourselves, but thank goodness for one another, because we make it a little harder to get away with self-deception, especially when we're in close quarters for extended periods of time with one another. And so once one isn't in a relationship, the pressure's off. There's a little more space, and you have a little more room to go into loving oneself, loving yourself, working on yourself, dialing it in, and refining our minds, refining our hearts, refining our deeds, our ways of being, so that if indeed we still feel that pull, or it happens upon us again and we enter into intimate relationship again, we'll have another opportunity to see how we've been doing with ourselves, and hopefully we've used the time in between well, so that we can better love somebody, so that we can really give our very best, because isn't that what we all want to do, is give our very best, and really it makes somebody feel honored and appreciated and seen and special to us. And so I know that's what gives me the most joy, is to be able to love in that way. So right now, not with anyone, and I can just work on that. I have the space. I don't have the pressure put on me to be. I don't have to be able to be my best, because I'm not around anybody else but myself. So just to use that time, and understand that it's a tremendous opportunity, and it takes some of the pressure off. You know, it's a time to get to know oneself, and embrace and enjoy the freedom that is our aloneness, the space of our own, you know, that's all our own. So I guess that's what I would add to what's been said. So, thanks.
Thank you, Travis. Beautiful. Other than radical surrender, I would say there's a term that we all watched the video during group meditation. This was Eckhart during School of Awakening, talking about relationships, and he uses the word, and I can just hear Marla's voice in my head saying compassionate surrender, right? Compassionate surrender to the other, that now that you're letting go of your partner, let them go very compassionately. No, I have no reason to make it like a contentious, conflict-ridden, like letting go. Just let go, ease, presence, let's go with ease, right? Let them have the money, let them have the cars. If you have enough, like a roof over your head and enough to supply for yourself, be okay with it. The universe will provide, right? So compassionate, conscious uncoupling. So this is where your presence power is going to benefit you the most, is consciously uncouple. Don't create more karma. You already created karma getting divorced, right? So don't create more karma by putting reactivity into the relationship. So I would add to the radical acceptance, the compassionate surrender as well. Thank you. Thank you, Travis, for that. Kelly, did you want to say something? And I think we should end at this and then we can resume the other questions, because I think Eileen has had a long day. I can see Kelly is yawning. It's been a long day.
I'm actually changing the pressure in my head sitting here doing some qigong breathing, so that's why I'm yawning.
Okay.
But yeah, it has been a long day. Yeah, I'd definitely like to speak to this.
Thank you.
Having
From
been
your own, from your own. Go ahead.
I've never been addicted to pharmaceuticals other than sugar. When I was a teenager, I had alcohol poisoning and my system went into shock, and I had candida candidiasis in an extreme way that started shutting my organs down, actually. So I went through a radical shift in diet and cleansing of my system, and basically had to go cold turkey off of sugar. And that's my point of reference for understanding addiction and the way that the body and your whole nervous system can be so addicted to a substance that withdrawal system symptoms suck. Having also been married and divorced, that is another type of withdrawal from addiction or connection to a space. So looking at both as the same thing is how I view it now. And this is from, years. I mean, it's been 10 years since I got divorced. Some of the things that I do still for my nervous system to support my body physically is making sure that I'm getting my greens, that I'm getting my minerals, but I also do take some very specific supplements, B12. If you are going through a lot of stress, your nervous system is under a lot of stress. Your body is using up minerals to cope with the stress and deal with the cortisol levels and serotonin levels. So B12 helps the nervous system actually repair itself physically. As well, if your body is adjusting to a new diet and or needs to be a little bit more supportive in terms of the absorption of nutrients to help build a healthier body, apple cider vinegar is absolutely amazing and wonderful. I take it in water diluted so I can just chug it and try not to wince too much at how bitter it tastes. But this is about the healthy bacteria in the body. This is why eating yogurt is really, really good, except some people do not want to eat yogurt or cannot eat dairy. So apple cider vinegar and water is great. You also may want to look at certain things like ashwagandha that help reduce cortisol levels, help the liver and the fatty deposits in the liver be a little bit more balanced so that there is less stress on the liver. It's something that I use. Cordyceps, reishi, mushrooms are really, really, really good for the body. Even the mushrooms that you can get at the grocery store, they're really, really good because this is about healthy bacteria in the body. When your gut is healthy, the vagus nerve, which runs through your entire body, gut to brain, is able to absorb more nutrients more easily, and you're able to provide the type of internal flora or healthy gut bacteria that your body needs and your nervous system needs to actually heal. And this is something that I have been doing, for 20 years in terms of the B12 the apple cider vinegar, and another thing that I like a lot is Siberian ginseng. And the reason why is because Siberian ginseng is what's called an adaptogen. And adaptogen helps your nervous system adapt to stress and cope, unlike Korean red ginseng, which provides a little bit of a testosterone boost and a kick of energy and stimulation of the adrenal glands. It is an adaptogen, but it is not a balanced adaptogen the way, like, it's Korean red ginseng is very yang, it's very fiery, and Siberian ginseng is something that helps me in place of, you know, drinking pots and pots of delicious, yummy coffee with caramel sprinkled on top of it and stuff like that. It gives me, like matcha tea, Siberian ginseng gives a nice boost of energy while also helping my nervous system be calm. So on a physical level, those are some of the things that I do and have done consistently for 20 years. So I'm speaking from concrete experience here in terms of the benefits. These are things that I've had friends who've quit smoking use, and to great benefit. So the B12, the Siberian ginseng, and the apple cider vinegar to help their bodies recalibrate. Ooh, good word. Recalibrate. As to the divorce aspect of this transition, for me, my divorce was one of the best things that ever happened to me. My relationship with my ex-wife was, albeit just a little drawn out, and not for, you know, anything other than a learning experience, and making consciously sure that certain patterns of my monkey mind were burnt out. And this is actually a conscious decision that I made in the latter stages of my relationship with my ex-wife. And sometimes I reflect back and I go, that was an interesting decision-making process. However, learning how strong we are comes in many, many different varieties of life experiences. And divorce is one of those life experiences that changes everything. And at the time, I had two very contrasting feelings in my system. One was like, oh my God, this is awful. I just want to get through this. I don't want to feel all this grief and suffering and pain and blah, 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 and all those other highly emotional, dense energy patterns. And the other one was like, you know, we're going to get through this. And on the other side, we are going to look back and go, oh my God, this is the best thing ever. This is the best thing that ever happened to us. And I'd be like, okay, enjoy that little moment there. It's just like, I'm just going to like thread the needle here and just try and stay sane while this is all going on. And I went through a lot of grief, normal. I went through a lot of anger, a lot of denial, all normal spaces. Going through a divorce, you will constantly go through what seems like a revolving door of emotional spaces that seem to focus on the repetition of the anger, the denial, and the grief. And your monkey mind will try and keep you focused on the suffering. And this is all normal. This all happens. I mean, this is, be it addiction of a person or addiction of another substance, it is the same energy through and through. It's the same thing that our nervous systems and our bodies physically have to deal with. And awareness-wise, we have to discipline ourselves and discover that strength inside of us, which, if you are already in the middle of all of this, you are already experiencing your strength. And this is something to really reflect on and to let yourself embrace that space. Even if it's this little flicker of like, oh wait, that kind of feels right. Even if it's this little itty bitty speck of, wow, yeah, maybe there's something there. Grab hold of that and hold on, because that is the truth of this experience. That is the truth of being present, of practicing being present, is to discover our strength. And every one of us will have, through our lifetimes, over and over again, events and experiences that reaffirm and confirm and validate just how strong we actually are. So while, you're going through this, a lot of it may feel absolutely awful, but you are actually walking through it already. If you're here, you're with us, you are already allowing yourself to discover this feeling of strength inside of you to step into a brand new part of your life for yourself.
Beautiful. Thank you, Kelly. I love the supplements that you suggested. I know Medical Medium in his book, Cleanse to Heal, he has a whole section on addiction, and the topmost being celery juice, right? Every illness he talks about cleansing with celery juice because it cleanses the liver out very
Yep.
well. I do want to take a moment. Travis, can you answer Nancy's question? She's asked for the very first time. I don't want to let go of this session without her just quick answer, and then we can close. I'm thinking.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I'm thinking the more selfish we are, the more desires, thus the busier our minds. Why we are never happy when selfish and have no peace.
Mm-hmm.
If you can quickly answer that, and then we can close. Thank you.
Sure. Okay. I feel like this is one that I'll be sitting with after we close, because it's I feel like it touches on something that I'm working out within myself, or coming to an even more refined understanding of. It's like, it feels like something I'm kind of working on right now. So I'll do my best to answer it in a way that might be helpful. So I guess, selfish used in this way, it's referring to our separate sense of self, our differentiated sense of self, our concept of who we are, our ego, right? So what happens when we serve that, when we make that our God, right? And we continue to serve that, it's almost like it creates chaos. Because it's really not the deeper truth of who we are. I believe that when we're, for instance, I know for myself, in my practice, I've been lucky to, I fell into becoming a caregiver, and I love taking care of other people and the selfless action of it. And what it does is it stills my mind, it calms my mind, because I can see and feel and sense the oneness that we share, the deeper connectedness that is there. And that creates calm in my heart, and stillness in my heart, and calm in my mind, and stillness in my mind, because now I'm sinking into a deeper truth, the deeper reality. So to try to come back and answer this quickly, I'm thinking the more selfish we are, because it's taking us away from ourselves, and it creates chaos in our minds. If we flip the question, so if we want a more still mind, selfless action is actually a great way to help with that, and selfless thinking, and selfless desires, or maybe an even better way to say that is just thinking or desires or action with a greater regard to the whole. They're more wholesome and less partsome. So it's and if we think in that way, everything settles a little bit more with that recognition of that that we don't exist. We don't have any existence all our own. We don't exist apart from life. We don't exist apart from one another. That is it's a concept, and it's not true. So if we can see that and behave, and you know, there are lots of practices we can do that help to bring about that more still quality of mind. Is that helpful? I don't know. It's the best I have right now.
It's a beautiful thing. And if we are not able to execute the selfless action, the most selfish thing we can do is just sit in a room quietly by ourselves in solitude, give ourselves solitude to heal the selfishness, right? Thank you. Y'all did an incredibly amazing job today. It was like a lot of fun, really joyful experience. To everyone out there, Tina, Louise, for asking questions, Trish, it was really amazing. So we'll meet again next week, and have a fantastic week. Many blessings to everyone. Take care, stay safe, stay healthy. We'll meet again next Wednesday. Have more challenging questions. Good enough questions. Bye. Good night.
Everybody.
Much
Thank
love.
you.